I walked into that mahogany-paneled conference room at Harrison and Associates, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The prestigious law firm's downtown Chicago office felt intimidating, all dark wood and leather-bound books. Great-Aunt Eleanor's will reading was supposed to be my chance to finally feel included in family matters. But as I stepped through the doorway, I saw them all already seated around the polished table. My parents, siblings, cousins, and cameras. Professional cameras with bright lights pointing at every chair. My mother Janet's voice cut through the air like a knife. "She's not even family." The room erupted in snickers, and I realized this wasn't about inheritance. This was about exposing my deepest family secret on national television. The laughter died down as I found an empty chair in the back corner, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. Mr. Harrison, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes, cleared his throat and gestured toward the camera crew. "Before we begin the formal reading," he announced, "I want everyone to understand that Mrs. Eleanor Winston specifically requested this session be filmed as part of the documentary series American Family Legacies for the Discovery Network." My stomach dropped. A documentary about our family, about me. The director, a woman in her 40s wearing all black, stepped forward with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We're honored to capture this important moment in the Winston family history." Mrs. Winston believed her story needed to be told. My father David leaned back in his chair with that smug expression I knew so well. He was 54 years old, with graying brown hair, and the kind of confidence that came from never being challenged. "Well, it's certainly an interesting family story," he said, glancing directly at me, "especially the part about how Eleanor insisted we take in a charity case." The cameras swiveled toward me as Janet, my mother, smoothed her blonde hair and smiled for the lens. At 51, she still carried herself like the beauty queen she'd been in college, but there was something sharp and cold in her blue eyes now. "Macy came to us when she was 3 years old," Janet explained to the camera, as if I weren't sitting right there. "Her birth parents died in a terrible car accident on Interstate 70. No other relatives. Eleanor felt so sorry for the poor little thing. She practically begged us to adopt her. My brother Tyler, 26, and still carrying himself like the high school football star he'd once been, jumped in eagerly. I remember when they brought her home. She was so quiet and strange, never wanted to play with the rest of us. She always preferred books to people," added my sister Nicole, 24 and perfectly put together in her designer dress and pearls. Even as a kid, she'd rather sit in a corner reading than join family activities. The documentary director encouraged them to share more memories, and they obliged with enthusiasm. Each story painted me as the odd one out, the child who never quite belonged. They talked about how I spent holidays alone in my room, how I struggled to connect with anyone except Aunt Eleanor during her rare visits. "Eleanor always had a soft spot for Macy," David continued. "Maybe because they were both a little different from the rest of us. Eleanor never married, never had children of her own. I think she saw something of herself in Macy." As they spoke, memories flooded back. Being 8 years old and feeling invisible at family gatherings, watching my siblings get celebrated for every small achievement while my straight A's went unnoticed. The way conversations stopped when I entered a room, as if my presence was an interruption. But I also remembered Aunt Eleanor's monthly visits to our Kansas City suburb. She'd drive her old blue Cadillac from Chicago, always bringing books and stories about her travels. While the rest of the family barely tolerated her eccentricities, she and I would spend hours talking about everything from ancient history to modern art. Eleanor was 91 when she passed last month, Mr. Harrison interjected gently. She lived independently until the very end, sharp as a tack. She left very specific instructions about how this reading should be conducted. The room buzzed with anticipation. I could see the dollar signs practically dancing in everyone's eyes. Eleanor had lived in a beautiful Victorian house in Lincoln Park, drove luxury cars, and always dressed impeccably. Everyone assumed she'd accumulated significant wealth over her long life. My cousin Marcus, David's older brother's son, rubbed his hands together nervously. At 32, he'd always been the family entrepreneur, though his ventures never seemed to work out quite right. Aunt Eleanor always talked about taking care of family. I'm sure she remembered all of us. His sister Sarah nodded eagerly. At 29, she'd been through a difficult divorce and was raising her son alone. She was always so generous with gifts at Christmas. I know she'd want to help secure our children's futures. The cameras captured every gesture, every hopeful expression. I felt like a specimen under a microscope, the outsider looking in on a family that had never truly accepted me despite 18 years of sharing their name and their roof. But something nagged at the back of my mind. In her final months, Aunt Eleanor had been making mysterious phone calls, scheduling private meetings with lawyers and accountants. She'd asked me strange questions about the family, about how everyone treated me, about my dreams and goals for the future. Now, before we begin the formal reading, Mr. Harrison said, shuffling through a thick stack of documents, Mrs. Winston wanted me to share some preliminary information she gathered about each family member's current circumstances. The room fell silent. Something in his tone suggested this wasn't going to be the straightforward inheritance distribution everyone expected. Mr. Harrison opened a manila folder and pulled out several typed pages. The camera crew moved closer, sensing drama about to unfold. Mrs. Winston spent considerable time researching each family member's current financial situation, he began. She believed it was important to understand everyone's needs before making her final decisions about the estate. David shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Well, that's very thorough of her, but I'm not sure why that matters for a will reading. It matters, Mr. Harrison said firmly, because she made her decisions based on what she discovered. The lawyer's eyes moved to my father first. David, according to Eleanor's notes, you're currently 3 months behind on your mortgage payments. The house you've lived in for 20 years is facing foreclosure proceedings. The color drained from David's face. How could she possibly know that? Our financial matters are private. Eleanor was quite resourceful, Mr. Harrison replied. She also noted that you've borrowed against your retirement account twice in the past year and have been avoiding calls from creditors. Janet's perfectly manicured hands trembled as she reached for her purse. This is highly inappropriate. Our personal finances have nothing to do with Eleanor's will. Actually, they have everything to do with it, the lawyer continued. Janet, Eleanor discovered you've accumulated credit card debt exceeding $50,000. Multiple cards, multiple stores, purchases ranging from designer handbags to jewelry to home decor items you don't need. That's not that much debt, Janet protested weakly. Lots of people carry credit card balances. When your husband is facing foreclosure and you're still spending $3,000 a month on unnecessary items, it becomes relevant, Mr. Harrison said quietly. Tyler's confident posture crumbled as the lawyer turned to him next. Tyler, you dropped out of law school 8 months ago without telling your parents. You owe $67,000 in student loans for an education you didn't complete, and you've been lying about attending classes while actually living in a studio apartment and working at a sporting goods store. I was going to tell them, Tyler mumbled. I just needed time to figure things out. The time for honesty would have been before you racked up additional debt selling marijuana to college students, Mr. Harrison added. Tyler's face went white. How could she know that? I was careful. Nicole's designer dress suddenly seemed like armor that couldn't protect her from what was coming. Nicole, your art gallery business filed for bankruptcy 4 months ago. You've been using credit in your parents' names to keep up appearances, but you owe creditors nearly $40,000. The art market is difficult right now, Nicole said defensively. I was trying to salvage the business. By forging Eleanor's signature on several small checks over the past 6 months? Mr. Harrison asked. The room went dead silent. Nicole's face turned crimson. Marcus stood up abruptly. This is insane. How could Eleanor know all this? And why does it matter? We're family. We support each other through difficult times. Sit down, Marcus, Mr. Harrison said firmly. Eleanor knew about your real estate development company because you've been using client escrow funds to pay personal expenses. $300,000 of other people's money that should have been held in trust. Marcus collapsed back into his chair. I was going to replace it. I just needed a short-term loan to cover some investments that went bad. Stealing client funds isn't a loan, the lawyer said. It's embezzlement. Eleanor found documentation showing you've been moving money between accounts to hide the missing funds for over a year. Sarah had been silent through all the revelations, but now her face was pale with dread. What about me? What did she find out about me? Mr. Harrison's expression softened slightly. Sarah, this one hurt Eleanor the most. You've been telling everyone that your son has leukemia and needs expensive treatments not covered by insurance. You've collected over $15,000 in donations from family, friends, and coworkers. My son does need medical care, Sarah said quickly. Your son is perfectly healthy, the lawyer replied. Eleanor hired a private investigator who confirmed he's never been diagnosed with any serious illness. You've been using the donated money for living expenses and your own wants. The camera crew captured every moment of shock, every denial, every desperate attempt to justify their actions. The room that had been filled with confident expectation just minutes ago was now thick with shame and fear. Eleanor spent her final months watching and documenting, Mr. Harrison continued. She hired investigators, reviewed financial records, and talked to people in your communities. She wanted to understand who her family really was before deciding how to distribute her estate. But why? David asked desperately. Why go to such lengths? We're her family. We loved her. Did you? Mr. Harrison challenged. When was the last time any of you visited Eleanor in the nursing home? When did you last call her just to talk, not to ask for money? The silence was deafening. Macy, the lawyer said, turning to me for the first time, was the only family member who visited Eleanor regularly. Every Sunday for the past 2 years. She called every Wednesday evening to check in. She remembered Eleanor's birthday, brought her favorite flowers, and sat with her during doctor's appointments. I felt tears forming in my eyes as I remembered those Sunday afternoons. Eleanor would tell me stories about her youth, about building her life as an independent woman in a time when few women had careers. She'd ask about my job at the accounting firm, my small apartment, my dreams of maybe someday starting my own business. Eleanor was testing all of you, Mr. Harrison said. Every family gathering, every holiday, every interaction was observed and noted. She wanted to see how you treated each other, how you treated Macy, and how you conducted yourselves when you thought no one was watching. The documentary director gestured for her cameras to capture the devastated faces around the table. This wasn't just a will reading anymore. It was a moral reckoning that would be broadcast to millions of viewers. Now, Mr. Harrison said, pulling out an elegant leather folder, let's discuss Eleanor's actual will and how she decided to address these discoveries. Mr. Harrison opened the leather folder with careful precision, revealing pages of legal documents and a handwritten letter in Eleanor's distinctive script. The camera crew adjusted their positions to capture every detail. Before we discuss the distribution of assets, he began, Eleanor wanted me to read this letter she wrote specifically for this moment. He unfolded the cream-colored stationery and began to read in Eleanor's own words. My dear family, if you're hearing this, then I've passed on, and you're gathered to learn about my final wishes. But first, I need you to understand that I've spent my last months learning some very difficult truths about who you really are. The room was absolutely silent except for the quiet hum of the cameras. David. I discovered you've been stealing from the pension fund at Midwest Manufacturing for over 2 years. The accounting discrepancies you've been hiding total nearly $80,000. I have copies of the falsified reports and bank records showing where that money went. David's face went ashen. That's impossible. How could she have access to company records? Mr. Harrison continued reading without pause. Janet, I learned about your 5-year affair with Robert Chen from next door. The hotel receipts, the phone records, the gifts you bought him with money meant for household expenses. Your husband doesn't know, but I have all the evidence. Janet's hands flew to her mouth in horror. She couldn't know about that. No one knows about that. Tyler. Selling drugs isn't just foolish, it's dangerous. I have photographs of you dealing outside the college dormitories and text message records of your transactions. You put yourself and others at risk for money you spent on gambling and alcohol. Tyler buried his face in his hands. I needed the money. The loans weren't enough. Nicole, forging my signature was particularly hurtful because I trusted you. I have security footage from the bank and handwriting analysis, proving you cashed 6 checks totaling $4,200 over 6 months. Each signature was carefully practiced to match mine. Nicole started crying softly. I was desperate. The gallery was failing, and I didn't know what else to do. Marcus, your real estate fraud extends beyond the $300,000 I mentioned earlier. You've been running a Ponzi scheme, using new client investments to pay back earlier clients while skimming money for personal use. The total amount missing is closer to $750,000. Marcus stood up shakily. Eleanor must have been confused. She was 91. People that age sometimes imagine things. She was sharp until the very end, Mr. Harrison said firmly. And she had professional investigators verify every detail. The letter continued. Sarah, lying about your child's health is perhaps the cruelest deception of all. You've stolen money from people who wanted to help a sick child, and you've dishonored every family genuinely struggling with medical bills. Your son is healthy and happy, thank God, but your lies have hurt real families who needed that donated money. Sarah was sobbing openly now. I never meant for it to go so far. I just needed help. And people responded when they thought Jamie was sick. I was going to pay it back. But here's what hurt me most, Eleanor's letter went on, watching how you treated Macy. This young woman who lost her parents as a toddler, who came to our family needing love and acceptance, has been treated as an outsider for 25 years. You've mocked her intelligence, dismissed her achievements, and made her feel unwelcome at her own family gatherings. The cameras captured my tears as the words hit me like physical blows. Hearing Eleanor acknowledge what I'd experienced for so many years was both validating and heartbreaking. Macy graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern University with a degree in accounting. She's never asked for financial help, never caused family drama, never committed crimes or hurt others. She works hard, lives modestly, and treats people with kindness. Yet you've all acted as though she's somehow lesser, because she wasn't born into this family. Mr. Harrison paused to let the words sink in before continuing. I watched all of you at Christmas dinner last year. When Macy brought homemade gifts she'd spent weeks creating, you barely acknowledged them. When she offered to help with dishes, you told her not to bother because she didn't know where things belonged. When she tried to share news about her promotion at work, you changed the subject to talk about Tyler's latest get-rich-quick scheme. The truth of those memories stung. I remembered that Christmas dinner, how excited I'd been to share my good news about becoming senior accountant at my firm. But Tyler had started talking about his idea for a cryptocurrency investment company, and everyone had focused on that instead. I also watched Macy's reaction to all of this treatment. She never complained, never fought back, never said unkind things about any of you despite how you excluded her. She continued showing up to family events with genuine hope that things might improve. The documentary director whispered something to her camera operator, clearly recognizing the emotional power of this moment. Over the past year, I conducted my own investigation into each of your characters. I gave you all opportunities to show kindness, honesty, and integrity. Every one of you failed those tests, except Macy. Mr. Harrison turned the page and continued reading. I told David I was concerned about my finances and asked if he could recommend a trustworthy accountant. Instead of suggesting his adopted daughter who works in that exact field, he tried to sell me on an investment scheme that would have earned him a commission. David winced visibly. I told Janet I was feeling lonely and might need help managing my household. She suggested I hire strangers, rather than mentioning that Macy had repeatedly offered to help with anything I needed. Janet's tears were flowing freely now. I asked Tyler about his career plans, and he lied to my face about law school while asking for a loan to cover textbooks. I asked Nicole about her business, and she tried to convince me to invest in her gallery despite knowing it was already failing. The weight of Eleanor's disappointment was crushing. She'd given them chances to show their true character, and they'd failed every test. Most telling of all, the letter continued, I asked each of you to tell me something wonderful about Macy. Not one of you could think of anything positive to say about this remarkable young woman who has been part of your family for 25 years. That revelation hit me like a physical blow. They couldn't think of one good thing to say about me. Not one. But when I asked Macy about all of you, she spoke with love and concern. She worried about David's stress at work, Janet's unhappiness, Tyler's struggles to find direction, Nicole's disappointment about her business, Marcus's financial pressures, and Sarah's challenges as a single mother. Even after years of being treated poorly, she still cared about your well-being. The contrast was stark and painful. While I'd been worrying about their problems, they couldn't even acknowledge my existence as valuable. This brings me to my final decision about the distribution of my estate, Eleanor's letter concluded. I've structured my will not just to address your financial needs, but to address your character deficiencies. Some of you may be surprised by what comes next. Mr. Harrison folded the letter carefully and reached for the legal documents. The room was thick with tension, shame, and anticipation. Now, he said, let's discuss Eleanor's actual estate and how she's chosen to distribute it. Mr. Harrison pulled out a thick legal document and adjusted his glasses. The camera crew moved closer, sensing they were about to capture something extraordinary. The estate of Eleanor Margaret Winston, he began formally, consists of several components that the family was not fully aware of. He turned to face everyone directly. First, there's the residential property, the Victorian house in Lincoln Park, currently valued at $1.2 million. Then, there are her personal savings and investment accounts, totaling approximately $1.1 million. David leaned forward eagerly. So about $2.3 million total, just as we expected. That's just the beginning, Mr. Harrison said. What none of you knew is that Eleanor built a substantial business empire over the past 30 years. The room went completely silent. Eleanor owned and operated a chain of antique shops called Timeless Treasures, with locations in Chicago, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Detroit, and Street Louis. These 5 shops generate annual net profits of approximately $800,000. Marcus's mouth fell open. Antique shops? When did she have time to run antique shops? All those visits to old friends and little trips she mentioned were actually business trips to manage her stores, the lawyer explained. Eleanor was a brilliant businesswoman who preferred to keep her professional life private. But that wasn't all. Additionally, Eleanor owned 17 commercial real estate properties across 3 states, office buildings, retail spaces, and warehouse facilities. The total value of this real estate portfolio is $9.7 million. Sarah gasped audibly. Nicole started hyperventilating. Tyler looked like he was going to be sick. The total value of Eleanor Winston's estate, Mr. Harrison announced, is approximately $12 million. David collapsed backward in his chair so hard it nearly tipped over. Janet started screaming not words, just a high-pitched sound of shock and disbelief. Marcus began laughing hysterically, a manic sound that filled the room. Nicole sobbed so hard she couldn't breathe. Sarah actually fainted, slumping forward onto the conference table. The documentary crew captured every second of the meltdown. $12 million? Tyler whispered. $12 million? But Mr. Harrison wasn't finished. Now, as for the distribution of this estate, he continued as 2 assistants helped revive Sarah. Eleanor has left everything: the house, the savings, the investments, the business empire, and all real estate holdings to one person. The room held its collective breath. Macy Elizabeth Winston receives the entire inheritance. The explosion of reaction was immediate and devastating. David's face turned purple as he struggled to breathe. Janet's screaming became a constant wail. Tyler threw himself on the floor like a toddler having a tantrum. Nicole began hyperventilating so severely that Mr. Harrison called for medical assistance. Marcus started pounding the table and shouting about contesting the will. Sarah, who had just regained consciousness, fainted again. Through it all, I sat in stunned silence. $12 million. $12 million that Eleanor had secretly accumulated while living modestly and never letting anyone know the extent of her success. This is impossible, David gasped when he could finally speak. She can't leave everything to someone who's not even real family. Macy was adopted. She doesn't have Winston blood. Blood doesn't make family, Mr. Harrison said firmly. Love, loyalty, and character make family. Eleanor's will is completely legal and ironclad. She spent 2 years working with multiple attorneys to ensure it couldn't be contested successfully. But $12 million! Janet shrieked. How could she hide $12 million from us? We're her family. Ah! You're not her family, the lawyer replied coldly. You're people who shared her DNA and expected money from her death. There's a difference. Marcus stood up shakily, his face red with rage and desperation. I'll contest this will. I'll fight it in court. Macy manipulated an elderly woman. She probably had undue influence over Eleanor's decisions. Actually, Mr. Harrison said, reaching for another document, Eleanor anticipated that reaction. She left detailed video recordings explaining every decision. She also had independent psychiatric evaluations confirming her mental competency right up until her death. Any contest will fail and will result in additional legal fees you can't afford. The camera crew was having trouble capturing everything happening simultaneously. The family was in complete chaos, crying, screaming, threatening, and collapsing in every direction. But Eleanor's letter wasn't finished. Let me read the final section, Mr. Harrison said, raising his voice over the commotion. Eleanor wrote, I know my family will react poorly to this news. They'll claim it's unfair, that blood should matter more than character. But I've seen who these people really are when they think no one is watching. Macy is the only one who visited me out of love rather than obligation or expectation of reward. She's the only one who called to check on my well-being, who remembered my stories, who treated me like a person rather than a bank account. He paused as the room gradually quieted, everyone straining to hear Eleanor's final words. More importantly, Macy is the only one with the integrity and wisdom to handle this responsibility properly. She won't waste this inheritance on gambling, shopping, drugs, or fraud. She'll use it to build something meaningful and help others along the way. The final paragraph hit like a thunderbolt. I've watched Macy for 25 years, and I've seen her strength, her intelligence, her kindness, and her resilience. She survived losing her birth parents, endured years of being treated as an outsider in her adoptive family, and still managed to build a good life through hard work and determination. If that's not worthy of inheritance, then nothing is. As the lawyer finished reading, the room fell into a strange, hollow silence. The magnitude of what had just happened was sinking in. Eleanor hadn't just left me money. She'd left me validation, recognition, and the ultimate proof that family is about love, not blood. But I could see in their faces that this wasn't over. The shock was wearing off, and anger was taking its place. They weren't going to accept this quietly. Then I realized something that would shock them even more than the inheritance itself. I'd known this was coming for 6 months. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling but my voice steady. The cameras immediately focused on me as I faced my family for what felt like the first time in my life as their equal, or rather, as their superior in every way that mattered. I need to tell you all something, I said quietly. But my words carried clearly through the silent room. I've known about this inheritance for 6 months. The gasps were audible. David's face went from red to white in seconds. What do you mean you knew? Janet demanded, her voice hoarse from screaming. Eleanor told me about her plans last October, I explained, my heart pounding but my resolve strengthening with each word. She wanted to see how the family would treat me once she was gone, so she decided to conduct a final test. I turned to Mr. Harrison, who nodded encouragingly. For the past 6 months, Eleanor has been watching all of you even more carefully than before. She wanted to see if knowing she was sick, and didn't have long, would bring out any kindness toward me. Instead, you all became crueler. Tyler struggled to sit up from the floor where he'd been lying in his tantrum. That's not true. We weren't cruel. Really? I asked, my voice gaining strength. At her birthday party in November, when I tried to help serve cake, Janet told me I was getting in the way and to go sit down. When I offered to organize her medication schedule, David said she didn't need help from someone who wasn't really family. The memories poured out, each one a wound that had been carefully documented by Eleanor's watchful eyes. At Christmas, when I brought Eleanor that handmade photo album of our family history, Nicole laughed and said it was arts and crafts, time in kindergarten. When I offered to drive Eleanor to her doctor's appointments because I was worried about her driving at night, Marcus said she shouldn't trust her health to someone not qualified to make family decisions. Sarah, who had recovered from her second fainting spell, looked stricken. We didn't mean anything by those comments. Yes, you did, I said firmly. And Eleanor heard every word. She was testing whether knowing she was dying would inspire any of you to show kindness to the person who loved her most. Instead, you proved that your cruelty toward me was permanent. I reached into my purse and pulled out a letter in my own handwriting, one I'd been carrying for months, waiting for this moment. Eleanor and I spent hours planning this intervention. She didn't want to just punish you for being awful people. She wanted to give you a chance to become better people. Mr. Harrison smiled slightly. This is where the story takes an interesting turn. I unfolded my letter and began to read. Each of you will receive help with your financial crises, but only if you complete specific personal growth requirements that Eleanor and I designed together. The room went silent again, but this time with hope rather than shock. David, Eleanor is leaving $50,000 to pay off your mortgage debt and prevent foreclosure. But you'll only receive it after completing 1 year of Gamblers Anonymous meetings, financial counseling sessions, and making full restitution to Midwest Manufacturing for the money you stole. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish. How can I make restitution? I don't have the money. Eleanor's estate will provide a loan for the restitution, to be paid back through payroll deductions over 5 years. You'll keep your job, keep your house, and learn to manage money responsibly. I turned to Janet. Eleanor is leaving $40,000 to pay off your credit card debt. You'll receive it after completing therapy for shopping addiction, attending marriage counseling with David to address your affair, and volunteering 200 hours with a nonprofit organization helping women in financial crisis. Janet started crying again. But these tears seemed different, more like relief than despair. Tyler, Eleanor is leaving enough money to pay your student loans and support your return to law school. You'll receive it after completing drug rehabilitation, maintaining a 3.5 GPA for 2 consecutive semesters, and performing 300 hours of community service with at-risk youth. Tyler sat up straighter, something like hope flickering in his eyes. For the first time in months. Nicole, Eleanor is leaving money to pay your business debts and provide capital for a new venture. You'll receive it after making full restitution for the forged checks, completing business ethics courses, and successfully managing one of Eleanor's antique shops for 18 months to prove you can run an honest business. Nicole stopped crying and looked up with surprise. She let me manage one of her shops? My shops now, I corrected gently. And yes, if you prove you can be trusted. Marcus, your situation is more complicated because you've committed serious crimes. Eleanor is leaving money for restitution to your victims and legal fees for the best defense attorney available. You'll avoid prison if you make full financial amends, complete 1,000 hours of community service, and spend 2 years working as a financial counselor, helping people avoid the mistakes you made. Marcus looked stunned. She'd save me from prison? After everything? Eleanor believed in redemption, not revenge, I explained. But the conditions are non-negotiable. Finally, I turned to Sarah. Eleanor is leaving money for your legitimate living expenses and your son's actual educational needs. You'll receive it after publicly apologizing for the fake medical crisis, making donations to real children's cancer research equal to what you fraudulently collected, and volunteering with families genuinely facing medical challenges. Sarah nodded eagerly through her tears. I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes. The documentary director was capturing every moment, clearly recognizing that this story had become something far more powerful than a simple inheritance dispute. But here's the most important part, I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. Eleanor's real gift wasn't the money. It was the opportunity for all of us to become the family she always hoped we could be. I looked around the room at these people who had never truly seen me as their equal, let alone their superior in any way. I've spent 25 years trying to earn your love and acceptance. I've been patient with your cruelty, understanding about your flaws, and hopeful that someday you'd see me as worthy of basic respect. But Eleanor taught me something crucial in her final months. The room was absolutely silent, as I gathered the courage to say what I'd never been able to say before. I don't need your acceptance anymore. I never needed it. I'm a successful, intelligent, kind person, with or without your approval. The problem was never that I wasn't good enough for this family. The problem was that this family wasn't good enough for me. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. For the first time in my life, I had spoken my truth without apologizing, without softening it, without worry about their reactions. But Eleanor believed people could change. She believed this family could heal if you were willing to do the hard work of becoming better people. The question is, are you willing to try? The silence stretched for nearly a minute, as my words sank in. I could see each family member processing not just the inheritance news, but the deeper revelation that I had fundamentally changed. I wasn't the quiet, apologetic outsider anymore. I was a confident woman holding all the cards. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat and pulled out another set of documents. There's one more element to Eleanor's plan that Macy hasn't mentioned yet. He gestured toward the documentary crew. Eleanor specifically chose this filmed format for a very important reason. This entire session is being recorded not just for the family's benefit, but for national broadcast. David's eyes widened in horror. National broadcast? What do you mean? The documentary director stepped forward with a professional smile. The Discovery Network has already purchased the rights to this footage. American Family Legacies, the Eleanor Winston story, will air as a 3-part special series next month. Janet's hand flew to her throat. You mean people will see all of this? The financial problems? The crimes? The family dysfunction? Millions of people, the director confirmed. Eleanor believed that public accountability would be essential for genuine change. It's much easier to backslide on personal growth when no one is watching. I took a deep breath and continued Eleanor's plan. But the documentary won't just show your failures. It's going to follow each of your redemption journeys for the next 12 months. America will see whether you choose to become better people or remain stuck in your patterns of selfishness and dishonesty. Marcus looked terrified. People will know about the embezzlement? People will know about everything, I said firmly. But they'll also see your efforts to make amends. Eleanor believed that shame could be transformative if it's balanced with genuine opportunities for redemption. Mr. Harrison opened another folder. Each family member's progress toward their goals will be documented monthly. Viewers will see David attending Gamblers Anonymous, Janet working through her shopping addiction, Tyler returning to school, Nicole learning business ethics, Marcus making restitution to his victims, and Sarah volunteering with genuinely sick children. This is insane, Tyler muttered. Our private lives will be entertainment for strangers. Your private lives became entertainment the moment you chose to live dishonestly, I replied. Eleanor is giving you a chance to redeem yourselves publicly. Most people don't get that opportunity. Sarah raised her hand tentatively. What if we refuse to participate? What if we don't want to be on television? Then you receive no financial assistance, no help with your debts or legal problems, and the documentary airs anyway, showing your refusal to take responsibility for your actions, Mr. Harrison explained. Eleanor made sure there was no way to avoid accountability. The weight of the choice was settling on them. They could embrace this chance for redemption and public vindication, or they could remain in their current situations with the additional burden of national humiliation. Nicole spoke up first. What exactly would I have to do to manage the antique shop? I smiled. recognizing the first sign of genuine engagement. You'd start as assistant manager under the current manager, learning inventory systems, customer service, pricing, and basic accounting. After 6 months, if you demonstrate honesty and competence, you'd become full manager with profit-sharing opportunities. And if I succeed? Eleanor's business model was designed for expansion. Honest, capable managers could eventually own their own franchise locations. You could build something real, instead of just another failed venture. David leaned forward, his voice tentative. The Gamblers Anonymous meetings. Would those be private? Some sessions would be filmed to show your commitment to change, but the group therapy aspects would remain confidential, Mr. Harrison assured him. Eleanor understood the balance between accountability and privacy. Janet wiped her eyes with a tissue. The marriage counseling. David doesn't know about Robert yet. He'll know everything before the documentary airs, I said gently but firmly. Eleanor believed that healing requires complete honesty. The counseling will help both of you work through the betrayal and decide if your marriage can be saved. Tyler looked up from the floor where he was still sitting. If I go back to law school and succeed, what happens after graduation? Eleanor's legal team always needs bright young attorneys, Mr. Harrison said. Outstanding students with personal experience overcoming challenges often make the most empathetic and effective lawyers. Marcus had been silent for several minutes, his face cycling through various emotions. The restitution. How much exactly? $750,000 to your victims, plus interest and penalties, I said. It sounds impossible, but Eleanor's estate will provide the funds up front. You'll spend the next 20 years paying it back through earnings from honest work, but your victims will be made whole immediately. And if I successfully complete the community service and counseling, you'll have a chance to rebuild your life without prison time, and with the knowledge that you've made amends for your mistakes. Eleanor believed in second chances, but only for people willing to earn them. The documentary director had been quietly capturing these negotiations, recognizing that she was witnessing something unprecedented in reality television. A wealthy woman using her death as an opportunity to force her family toward moral growth. There's one more element to Eleanor's plan, I said, pulling out a final document. The documentary won't just show your struggles and growth. It will also show how these changes affect our family relationships. I looked directly at each of them in turn. For 25 years, I've been treated as an outsider in this family. I've endured mockery, exclusion, and constant reminders that I wasn't real family. Eleanor's final gift to me wasn't just financial security. It was the power to decide what kind of family relationships I want going forward. The implications were clear. I now held all the power in family dynamics. They needed my forgiveness, my financial help, and my cooperation for their redemption stories to succeed. But unlike you, I believe in unconditional love and genuine family bonds. If you complete Eleanor's requirements and demonstrate real change, you'll find that I'm capable of the kind of loyalty and support you've never shown me. Janet started crying again. Macy, I'm so sorry. I never realized how cruel we were being. I thought we were just. I don't know what I thought. You thought I didn't matter because I wasn't born into this family, I said quietly. But Eleanor taught me that the family you choose is often stronger than the family you're born into. Now you have the chance to choose to become my real family, instead of just people who share a name. David stood up slowly, his voice thick with emotion. Eleanor was right about everything, wasn't she? About our character, our cruelty, our greed. We failed every test she gave us. But you haven't failed the final test, I said. The final test is whether you're willing to change. Whether you're willing to become people worthy of love and respect, instead of just demanding it because we share DNA. The room fell silent as the magnitude of the choice before them settled in. They could embrace this difficult path toward redemption, or they could remain the people they'd always been: selfish, dishonest, and cruel. One by one, I saw the decision forming in their eyes. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of the same law office where our journey had begun. The cameras were rolling again, but the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. This time, the room was filled with hope, pride, and genuine family love. Mr. Harrison smiled as he shuffled through progress reports from each family member. I've been practicing law for 35 years, and I've never seen a more remarkable transformation. David sat up straighter, his posture reflecting newfound confidence and integrity. He'd lost 20 pounds, not from stress this time, but from the healthy lifestyle changes that came with addressing his gambling addiction. I celebrated 6 months of sobriety yesterday, he announced. 6 months without placing a single bet, and more importantly, 6 months of honest work at Midwest Manufacturing. The company had indeed kept him on after he made full restitution. His managers, impressed by his courage in confessing and determination to make amends, had promoted him to senior supervisor. His transparency about his gambling addiction had actually made him more effective at his job, not less. The marriage counseling has been difficult, Janet admitted, but transformative. Learning to address my shopping addiction while working through the affair has brought David and me closer than we've been in years. She'd completed her required volunteer hours at a women's financial counseling center and had been asked to stay on as a part-time employee. Her experience with overspending made her uniquely qualified to help other women recognize and address their own destructive financial patterns. Tyler grinned as he pulled out his latest report card. 3.7 GPA this semester, and I'm on track to graduate law school next year. The community service work with at-risk youth has shown me the kind of law I want to practice. His drug rehabilitation had been challenging, but working with teenagers facing similar struggles had given him purpose beyond his own recovery. Several colleges had already reached out about hiring him for their student counseling programs after graduation. Nicole practically glowed with excitement as she shared her news. The Lincoln Park Antique Shop had its best month ever in December. I've learned more about business ethics and customer service in 6 months than I learned in 4 years of college. She'd discovered a genuine talent for antique restoration and had developed relationships with estate sale companies across the Midwest. Her shop was becoming known for unique pieces and honest dealings, exactly the opposite of her previous failed ventures. Marcus's transformation had been the most dramatic of all. I've made restitution to all my victims, he announced. Seeing the relief on their faces when they got their money back has been humbling and healing. The financial counseling work has given me a chance to use my experience to help others avoid my mistakes. His community service hours had been completed working with a nonprofit that helped people recover from financial fraud. His insights into how scammers operated made him uniquely effective at education and prevention programs. Sarah's changes had perhaps been the most emotionally significant. I've completed 200 hours of volunteer work with families genuinely facing childhood cancer, she said, tears in her eyes. Meeting parents who are actually living my lies has been the most humbling experience of my life. Her public apology had been featured in local media, and her ongoing fundraising work for legitimate children's medical charities had raised over $50,000. Several families had specifically thanked her for her honesty and dedication to making amends. The documentary director looked up from her notes. The response to the first 2 episodes has been overwhelming. Viewers are calling this the most inspiring family story they've ever seen. The network wants to do a follow-up series in 2 years. The best part, I said, looking around the room with genuine warmth, is that these changes aren't just for the cameras. Our family dinners are completely different now. It was true. The monthly family gatherings that had once been exercises in endurance were now celebrations of genuine connection. We talked about our goals, our struggles, our successes, and our dreams. For the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged. Eleanor's businesses are thriving under Macy's leadership, Mr. Harrison added. The antique shops have expanded to 2 new locations, and the real estate portfolio has increased in value by 15%. I discovered that I had a natural aptitude for business management. Working with Nicole and the other shop managers had taught me about retail operations, while managing the real estate portfolio had given me insights into commercial development. Eleanor had left me not just wealth, but a platform for building something even greater. I've established the Eleanor Winston Foundation, I announced. It provides scholarships for adopted children, pursuing higher education, and grants for elderly care facilities. We've already helped 47 students and 3 nursing homes. The foundation had become my passion project. Using Eleanor's money to help people facing similar challenges felt like the perfect way to honor her memory and create lasting positive impact. But the most important change was in our relationships. David looked directly at me with eyes clear of shame and full of respect. Macy, I owe you an apology that's 25 years overdue. You've been an extraordinary daughter, and I was too blind and selfish to see it. Janet nodded through tears. You saved our family when you could have just walked away. You showed us kindness we didn't deserve and patience we hadn't earned. Tyler added, You're the strongest person I know. Watching you handle this inheritance with such wisdom and grace has made me want to become a better man. Nicole smiled genuinely. You've taught me what real success looks like. It's not about making money quickly or taking shortcuts. It's about building something meaningful through honest work and treating people well. Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. You could have let me go to prison. Instead, you gave me a chance to rebuild my life and make amends. I'll never be able to repay that debt. Sarah squeezed my hand. You showed me what real maternal love looks like by caring for a family that had never truly cared for you. You've made me want to be a better mother to Jamie. The documentary cameras captured the moment when they all stood up and for the first time in my life, surrounded me with a genuine group hug. Not because they needed something from me, not because it was a special occasion, but because they truly loved and respected the woman I'd become. Eleanor always said that families aren't born, they're built, I said through happy tears. It took her death to teach us how to build something beautiful together. Mr. Harrison closed the final file with satisfaction. Eleanor would be proud of all of you. You've proven that people can change, that families can heal, and that love really can triumph over greed and selfishness. As we prepared to leave, I realized that Eleanor's greatest gift hadn't been the $12 million. It had been the opportunity to transform pain into purpose, exclusion into empowerment, and a dysfunctional family into a source of genuine love and support. The little girl who had lost her parents at age 3 and spent 25 years feeling like an outsider finally had the family she'd always deserved. Not because we shared blood, but because we'd all chosen to grow, forgive, and love unconditionally. Standing in that conference room surrounded by people who had learned to see me as valuable, I felt Eleanor's presence and knew she was smiling. Her plan had worked perfectly. Justice had been served, lessons had been learned, and love had won. The cameras stopped rolling, but our story was just beginning. We walked out of that office as a real family for the first time. Not perfect, but honest, supportive, and committed to building something beautiful together. Eleanor's will reading had ended, but Eleanor's legacy would last forever in the lives we'd all chosen to rebuild. I'd like to ask you something that's been on my mind since hearing Eleanor's story. Have you ever felt like an outsider in your own family or group? And if so, how did you find the strength to either change the dynamic or create your own sense of belonging? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences and insights. If Eleanor's story of transforming family pain into purpose resonated with you, please like this video to help others discover this message of hope. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories about overcoming life's challenges. And please share this with someone who might need to hear that families can heal and people can change. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey. And remember, you're worthy of love and respect exactly as you are, regardless of where you came from or what others might think. Until next time, keep believing in the power of forgiveness, growth, and chosen family.